Yeah, thanks for that. This is actually my first LNM meetup as well, both presenting and attendant, so I hope I've kind of pitched it at the right level today. So yeah, I'm Matthew Lawson, I work here at CTM. I haven't been here too long, maybe about 5 to 6 months. My previous background, I was working for a chat company. Again, lots of real-time Node.js and Java modules and that kind of stuff. And this talk today is going to be a little bit more on the real-time chat side of things compared to what we do here at Compare the Market. So yeah, let's get on with it. It'll be and yeah, as Dan says, there's going to be a nice demo which I'll be handing around for you to have a go with in a few minutes. So yeah, what it's going to be about is the demo, which is I've done a little project to go alongside the slides today. I'll pass that around for you to have a look at, and we can show it on the screen as well. I'm going to go over some of the basic Chrome extension terminology with kind of the aim is that after this you'll be able to go away and come up with an idea for Chrome extension, write it yourself, just get to grips with some of the basics, the terminology you need to know, and a bit more in-depth how to actually use the APIs and that kind of thing. There'll be a high level, the architecture of how I made this project, and a bit more of a deep dive into the code. And then as a bit of an aside at the end, kind of a look into some of the malicious extensions you can either write yourself or things to be aware of if you want to, yeah, just when you're installing these Chrome extensions from either the developer or from the store. Okay, so it's demo time, let's see if it still works. So what it is basically that I've built is a little Chrome extension. It sits up here in the browser, and it's basically a chat. So if I can send a quick message. Okay, now send. Now, the best part is there's a Microsoft Surface here that I can pass around. There we go, it sorts itself. So if I type a message on here, there's a bit of a trick to using the Surface, so if it doesn't work out, you need a few tips. So you need to highlight this is awkward. You need to highlight press the input button on the input here. Type your message, it's got emojis, so if anyone wants to send some emojis, that's great. Type in, and then it's not clever enough to accept on the end, so you need to press the send button. And then we should get a notification on the big screen up there. So yes, it worked. Okay, so you can use that, you can submit a question or you just want to send some emojis or some abuse, that's fine. There's no handles or anything on here, you notice, so it's kind of anonymous, but I can see who's got the Surface. So yeah, we'll just start this one. One more tip is, if the keyboard disappears, like this, there's a little keyboard button in the bottom right hand side to get it back in. There you go, it still works. There you go, if you want to start. First the smiley face if you want to send an emoji. Okay, we'll get rid of that. Okay. Hello world, brilliant, it worked. So the first thing you need to know, basically the starting point of a Chrome extension is the MANIFEST.JSON. It's basically just a config file with some information about the titles, description, things that needs to be in the store for the extension, different icons to get so it looks great in the Chrome extension page when you're enabling and disabling things. And for all these special ones, like background scripts, permissions, I'll go into a few more details about that later on. So there's lots of different kinds of Chrome extension you can do. There's the browser action, which is basically a front end to your extension. One example is this Chrome extension that's going around now that you can see. And to define that in your MANIFEST.JSON, you just have this browser action element, and then a link to the default pop-up, which is the actual markup. And it's all just regular HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And you also have access to a whole library of special Chrome runtime libraries as well. When you're developing these things, you need to keep in mind that it's basically just treated as any other front-end site. When it's distributed on the store, there's no special, there's no obfuscation or anything. It's all completely open source. Anyone can go and inspect your extension. The page actions, they're basically pretty much the same as a browser action, apart from it's only for certain pages. So if For example, I've got one, it's called Camel. I recommend finding that out. It's for Amazon.com, and if you're on an Amazon product page, the extension goes from grey to a picture of a camel, and you can open it, and you get a little price graph of the product that you're currently looking at. So yes, they're very similar to a background page, to a browser action. You can have an OMNIBOX, OMNIBOX is the name for the search/URL input in Chrome. You've probably come across that before. You can set up your extension to basically trigger some special behavior when it comes across a keyword. So in the manifest, again, you have your OMNIBOX criteria and then a keyword in there. And so with this extension, anytime someone types in mat, it would, you'll get a special UI treatment happen in the URL bar, and then one of your scripts in the extension will start to receive events from the URL bar, so you can get information about what's being typed in, and you can handle that however you like. One example that is useful for, that you need to use it in conjunction with, is a background page. The extension that's being passed around now, it has a background page which has this persistent flag. And that basically means that even when the browser action or that front end isn't open, that script is always in the background. So you can have some kind of long-running script. In this case, it's connecting to a sock.io service. There's nothing offensive yet, I'm surprised. And you can also, these background scripts, there's another type called an event page, which doesn't run all the time, it only comes alive for certain events. An example of one of those events could be when the OMNIBOX is triggered, this background script will come alive, and then you can start using it. It also it also reacts to messages that pass between different parts of the extension. So between the browser action and the background page, you need to pass messages, which we'll go into more detail later on about how that actually works. But that's an example where you might want to wake up your background page, or your event page, sorry, based on something that the browser action has done, or the front end, you can think of it. There's content scripts. These are probably one of the more common ones. I've never actually written one, but they've got access to the DOM, so basically any page you access, they can read the DOM. A good example is an ad blocker, so that needs access to pretty much every page that you access, and then it can go ahead and block ads. A few things to be aware of for those. You can inject your own JavaScript, and it runs in a thing called isolated worlds, which is quite cool. So it means that if the site that your content script is triggered on is running jQuery 2, and your extension wants to run jQuery 2.5, you can do that without those two, like the global jQuery objects, getting in each other's way. Yeah, these are very powerful, because obviously they got access to the full DOM, and there's a few. I'll go into security later, but you can imagine if you're on your online bank or entering credit card details, that kind of thing, and you've got this third-party extension that can technically read everything that you're visiting, there's implications to bear in mind for that kind of thing. Overnight pages are pretty cool. You might have seen some like this for, they let you replace only these 3 pages, so the bookmarks page, the new tab, and the history page. You can just replace that whole UI with your own UI. So I've got an extension that replaces it with a new cat every time you open it. So if I open a new tab, you see here's a new tab. New cat comes in. And that's called Tabby Cat, if anyone wants to get that. It's kind of, I thought it was a good name. You can also do it on the history page, so if you want to change what your history looks like for any reason, that would be a good one to use. Yeah, and with Sock.io, if anyone hasn't used it before or knows what it is, there's a definition from the Sock.io website. Sock.io enables real-time, bidirectional, event-based communication. It works on every platform, browser or device, focusing equally on reliability and speed. So at a more technical level, it's a way to abstract the transport layer, so you don't need to worry about if you're sending messages to a server over WebSocket or long polling. A WebSocket is basically an open connection between your client and server, which then you can pass events to and from it. It's one connection, doesn't open and close. And long polling is, it's a bit old school now, so Yeah, it's a little bit old school now, so you don't have to, it's not, so WebSockets are supported more widely than, so you don't need this long port and fallback. But what it is basically, is the client will open a HTTP connection, and then the server will keep it open until there's some data to send, and then once it's sent, the connection closes, and the client then opens another connection to the server again. So it's kind of a way to do real-time stuff in all the browsers. And yeah, and Socket.io basically makes all that stuff really easy, so you don't need to worry about any of the transport stuff. This is what it means by event-based. So you get your I/O object, which you can set up really easily, and then you can get all these out-the-box events, just connection. So when there's a new client connected, this connection event fires, and you get a little reference. The second parameter is an anonymous function, and you get the reference to the client, which you can then use to broadcast, send more events out. Yeah, and this is how you send an event. It's really easy. You just send the I/O emit, and that will send a message to every client that's connected currently to the socket. It can be a string. It can be an int, it can be an object. It can be basically whatever you like. It just sends it out there, and the client library that goes alongside it, it's got an equally simple API to pick up on these events and pass the payload. Yeah, and the broadcast is something slightly different. So the broadcast will emit to everybody that isn't that currently connected client. So if in the chat example, you might want to accept the message sent event and then broadcast it to everybody apart from the client that sent it. And that's just an easy way to do that. Yeah, rooms and namespace, it's a piece of terminology that's a little bit hard to get your head around sometimes, but it's basically a way to, if you think of Slack as an example, what they call the workspace. So I've got my compare the market workspace and white collar factory workspace. You can imagine those as a namespace, and then inside of there you can have rooms. And a client needs to have knowledge of the workspaces it's connecting to, because that all happens at connection time. But for the rooms, for example, you can add a client to a room on the server side, and you don't need to worry about that stuff. But it's basically, you'll see some more examples later, but it's a powerful way to simplify your server logic, so you don't need to worry about kind of broadcasting just to a subset of users. You can put those users in a room and then broadcast to that room and let Socket.io handle all the emitting of those events. I've just seen someone's trying to do a cross-site scripting attack on my extension. It didn't work. So in the Chrome extension itself, this is the basic architecture. There's one small node server that's running, and then inside the Chrome extension, I'm using the background script functionality and the browser action functionality. And the background script is what does the actual connection to the socket, because that needs to have the long connection in the background. So as soon as you open Chrome, if you have this extension installed, it'll connect to that server. You don't have to have the UI open to actually connect. And then when the extension is opened, it'll be, all the communication here is done between there's some send message, special Chrome extension APIs, which we'll see in a bit. But they're all super simple to use. And those, the add listener, or the message add listener and the send message is pretty fundamental in if you need an extension to communicate between two different parts of it. And one cool feature of that as well is actually you can, if you know the extension ID of another extension, you can send messages between extensions as well. You're not limited just to your own extension. This is, I hope you can see that actually. It's a slightly more detailed version about how the messages are passed. So it's easiest to imagine if that background script that is basically the client to the socket that connects to the Socket.io server, and then once that's connected, it kind of waits down here for any events that might be sent from the socket to the background script. So this IO emit will be waiting here just to kind of pick up those messages, and then if it needs to send on back, so in the browser action, when we want to, so someone just typed in window alert, when that's sent from the browser action, that'll use those Chrome runtime APIs to send it to the background script, which then emits it straight to the Socket.io server. yes, now I'm just going to quickly go into some of the code. I'll try and keep it quite light. So yeah, this is just a quick Node module to actually set up the server listening. So you see it's really short and simple. The main part is just down here, where we need to actually set up the port to listen on, and we just use the quick Node HTTP server, pass that to the socket IO. Only thing I've done differently to the boilerplate is I've just switched around. By default, WebSocket and polling are the other way around, but I've just put WebSocket first so that the client will try and connect over the WebSocket first. And I've just used a Node module to export that, so that can be then imported in any part of the application you want to use the transport. Yeah, you can see that there. So there's basically just two parts of the application. After the connection's made, there's one part to handle the joins and leaves, which you might not see. I could disconnect my client on here, but I think that's probably risky. So when a new person joins, it just sends out a new thing saying 2 people are connected. And then the same when that same client disconnects, we do the same thing again. And having that connection as a Node module is really powerful, because then I quite like this pattern of being able to define like the same connection event again and do some different logic. So you don't have to have one big connection event that is then handling all that logic for the join leaves, plus all of the waiting for messages to be sent. And one other important part of this as well is you can see how it's using when it's received a send message from that background script, it's then emitting that to all the other clients basically. And this is just bringing it all together. It's just a 4-line. This is just when npm start runs. This is the main index. So it just pulls in all of those two modules, makes them start listening. So it's kind of super simple. Not a lot to the server side to this at all. But you can hopefully that gives a bit of a background that you can kind of see how you'll be able to make it more complicated if you want to implement the rooms or kind of new events for joining, leaving rooms, that kind of stuff. Kind of standard chat stuff, things for adding handles. Maybe you want to persist the messages somewhere. It's a kind of a really small starting point for that. And this is the client API that the background script will use to connect to that little socket server. You can see the library is very similar. They used to import from socket IO. And you get a very similar set of events. So there's socket on connect, and then you can, we just broadcast the different connection changes that happen when new clients join, so we can kind of keep all the state in sync. And this send Chrome message, this is what we'll see next, and this is actually how you use those Chrome runtime APIs to send messages between the browser action, to the browser action from the background script and vice versa. So it's just a send message with a callback, and then inside the callback you get the response. And we'll see in a second how we get this is how we actually, once it's sent the message, this is how we listen for the message. And then once we can trigger this send message callback to send the data back to the background script. So it's all just set up in callbacks really, but I just wrapped it inside of a promise, so we didn't need to worry about callbacks, just to abstract some of those callbacks away. And inside the browser action, one thing to know about the browser actions is that once they're closed, they're gone. There's no long run and there's no state you can access unless you specifically use some of the storage APIs. So it needs to, when it first opens, it needs to fetch the messages that are already there. So I don't know if you'll be able to, it's probably not worth closing it and opening it on the surface because it's quite difficult to press the button with your finger. So we just use the component did mount inside of React to wait for when the main chat component is added, and then we call this fetch messages, which is a Redux thunk action creator to go and get the newest messages. Yeah, we can see it here. It just goes and it uses the same send Chrome message to do that fetch from the background script and put it back into the Redux store. Yeah, this is it's reusing exactly the same code to communicate between the browser action and the background script. So we'll skip over that. So what else could be done? These slides are slightly out of date. I wrote them right before I went on holiday, and I actually implemented this notification, mostly just so you could like send emojis and things and mess around with it during the presentation. An obvious thing to do would be to add badges on it, unread badges for when these new ones come in. If you want to be able to send notifications, you need to make a few changes to your manifest. You need to actually request permission to send notifications, because you can see if there's a really busy chat, it could get quite annoying. And so when the user installs, we'll get a pop-up similar to this, just saying that the extension wants to be able to display notifications, and then you can it'll also give you a better choice. I'm not going to go into detail about why it's 4 spaces, because I think you know who said that, whoever it is. Yeah, so you can also, you can store the state in the Chrome storage if you want to, and that will make it, this is how you persist things between the browser action closing and opening again. And there is some cool features actually. The API is very similar to local storage, apart from it's asynchronous. And it's also got options to use this thing called the sync storage, which means that if the users sign in on their Google account and then they sign in again on a different PC, they'll also be able to, all the storage you've put in their sync account will appear in different places. So you'll be able to use them both. Yeah, so there's a couple security concerns that you don't, if you've installed an extension from the store, it's probably fine, but as a developer, it's good to keep in mind about what you can actually do, and just to get an idea of what these other developers can actually do, and just to be aware of who you're installing these things from. So, yeah, as I said, a content script, that's the one that the ad blockers use. They can basically read the entire DOM, so they can read, they know what website you're on, they can read the read the contents of your online bank, that kind of thing. So you're kind of trusting the extension developer to not do that. There is safeguards in place to make that not happen, which I'll talk about in a second. And yeah, this was quite an interesting one. That a browser action, it can read the current active tab. So I don't want to click back in the slides, but there's a permission called active tab, which if you request it, it doesn't appear in that list of permissions that the user requested pop up. But what it does is it lets the extension know the URL that you're currently on. And if you really don't like the idea of that, that's something that any extension can basically do. That doesn't need it doesn't display anything to the user to let them know that that's happening. So yeah, it's just something to bear in mind. It's very useful for developing extensions, but when it comes to like installing someone else's, it's something to bear in mind. The reason I said you don't need to worry about it too much is there is a review process. It's an automatic process that if you're using any of these enhanced permissions, or if these static analysis tools that Google run think that there's anything malicious in the extension, that will trigger a human review, and then the human will come and take a look at it and see what's actually done. And there is also a few exceptions to that as well. So it means that if you're upfront about what you're actually doing with it, so I've got one extension that it's called Data Selfie, and that collects a lot of information from your Facebook, from your Facebook feed, and puts that into the storage, and then gives you an overview of basically what Facebook knows about you, just to kind of make you aware of what Facebook knows about these things. But if the extension was collecting that data without letting you know in its store description, it would have got blocked. But because it's kind of upfront of the reason why it's doing these things, then it can get away with it. But the main reason they have this review process in there is to stop any malicious extensions on the store. So I'm sure there's probably ways you could get something slightly more malicious on the store if you're into that kind of thing. But it's yeah, I think the rules are deliberately fuzzy, but with just the main aim of don't make it malicious, basically. Yeah, the reason I put that on the end about the future Chrome extensions is because there hasn't actually been any updates to the APIs since late 2015, around the same time as the Chromebooks came out. So I think they probably invested a lot of money around that time. So yeah, I mean, as they are now, they're very full-featured. I don't know if Google's possibly wanting to encourage more people to use native functionality. So things like the background thread, you could use a web worker for that kind of thing. And there's obviously native notifications and that kind of stuff involved in there. But having a little button up here is still very powerful, in my opinion, to be able to basically have that functionality. But I obviously don't work for Google, so I can't speak for what their actual intentions are. Yeah, any questions? Kind of rushed through it a little bit. Yeah.
Malicious code, JS.
Yeah.
Can you send it by email or execute that on local user?
So the question is about running external code inside the extension.
Yeah, the JS code to an extension somehow.
Yeah, so you can run remote code inside of an extension, but inside the permissions you need to say that I'm accessing whatever CDN to download this code. So that's a good point. You could have an external script running and then modify the behavior post store approval. Yeah, good question. Is there?
With the background script, do you get a lot of the same functionality as service workers on PWA with like background sync? So on your chat, for instance, if they try doing a message when they've lost their internet, it will store it and then do it when they get internet back. And if so, is there any functionality that you don't have that you do have with service workers?
Functionality you don't have in a background thread that you do have with service workers. I'm not sure about that way around. One of the main benefits of a Chrome extension is you get all the permissions basically per extension rather than per URL. So you can get just kind of more upfront when you install this thing about what's going on, at least I think UX-wise.
Yeah.
I haven't used service workers too much myself, but it does look like the APIs do mirror like native web APIs. So I think that's probably that is kind of the direction things are going, but I still like Chrome extensions.
Okay.
Yeah. Is there some more?
I was going to say, does it import HTTPS in the same way that service workers do? Like, you have to make requests over HTTPS?
No, you don't have to. In Chrome extension, you can. That's not enforced to do all HTTPS. Yeah.
So with like React, for example, you get a lot of hot reloading. Is there ways of developing Chrome extensions quickly in the same way?
Yeah, so the way I developed this, I did kind of try and keep it out of a Chrome extension for as long as possible. You do kind of need to stick it in there at some point where you need it for the background stuff. But it does as you develop in the front end part of it, if you just close and reload, so if you have like a Webpack hot reload to rebuild your script every time, all you need to do is just close and reopen the button, and then you get the new code there again. So yeah, you can set up all the same Webpack watches and that kind of stuff, and the reload happens automatically.
How do you use it for work, or do you not use it for work?
I don't use it for work. I kind of thrown around a few ideas about how we might, but yeah, I've never. Well, even in my previous job, we didn't have any official Chrome extensions. It's more just a hobby. That was right at the back.
Anything like memory usage limits and stuff like that?
That's a good question. I haven't run into any myself, but they do recommend, like, for the background script, I'm using the long-running background script, and they do recommend to use the event pages rather than that, because obviously if I've got my socket client running in the background, and actually the way this one works, it does just collect messages in an array, which could get bigger and bigger and bigger. So there is a memory leak in the extension that's around somewhere. But yeah, that would be a good one for benchmark, but I don't remember reading anything in the documentation about that. Yeah.
Do you have access to any of the DevTool stuff?
Yeah, you get all the same dev tools you get in Chrome.
Oh, I mean, do you have access to the data that's in the DevTool? So you could build a DevTool off of a DevTool?
Oh, I see what you mean. I've never done that, but I do have the React dev tool installed. But yeah, I don't have any experience building the dev tool extensions.